and I blame the usual suspects who are in this room, that they really are, forced by government, so to speak, to re-nominate me to serve another 6 years, which will make my term 12 years when I finish. The Commission has been in existence for 25 years, believe it or not. In October, the Commission will be celebrating its 25th anniversary, and its headquarters is in the Gambia. The rules of procedure of the African Commission empowers the Commission to create subsidiary mechanisms such as special rapporteurs, working committees, and working groups. And in this regard, the Commission has created a number of special mechanisms, and these include the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa. And as already indicated, I'm the current Special Rapporteur. My office is the focal point for the protection and promotion of the right to freedom of expression and access to information on the African continent. My role includes monitoring violations of the right to freedom of expression and access to information on the continent, recommending to the African Commission measures that have to be taken to address these violations, and assist states parties to the African Charter to review their national media laws and policies to comply with principles set out in the African Charter and the Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression in Africa. The declaration was adopted by the African Commission 10 years ago to elaborate on Article 9 of the Charter, and Article 9 guarantees the right to freedom of expression and access to information. The terms of reference of my mandate as the Special Rapporteur includes, among other things, to analyze national media legislation, policies, and practices within member states, monitor their compliance with freedom of expression standards in general, and the Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression in particular, and advise member states accordingly. In addition to this, I'm also responsible for the promotion of human rights in a number of countries, and these countries are Lesotho, Namibia, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, and Swaziland. And I have to mention that a few years ago, I undertook a promotion mission to Namibia. I published my report, and if you go to the website of the African Commission, you will find my report on my visit to Namibia, and the website is www.achpr.org. www.achpr.org. ACHPR is an acronym for African Commission on Human and People's Rights. If you go to promotional mission reports, you'll then find the report that I released on Namibia. You will also find a report on the visit that was taken by the Working Group on Indigenous People. That report also is on the website. The Working Group on Indigenous People undertook a mission to this country a number of years ago. In 2007, the African Commission expanded my mandate, which at that time was only concentrating on freedom of expression, to include access to information. And since the expansion of my mandate, I have used my office to coordinate the efforts of various organizations that have been working tirelessly over the years to lobby African governments to adopt access to information laws. In this regard, I, with the support of various organizations that work and specialize in this field, a number of which are represented here today, we took a decision to develop a homegrown model law on access to information in Africa to assist state parties to the African Charter who are in the process of drafting or amending their access to information laws. And I'm emphasizing homegrown law because out there, the argument has been that the model access to information laws have been drafted by the West and don't speak to the African context. And to counter that argument, we thought of bringing together African experts who will sit and produce a model law on access to information. And this initiative started in 2010 after the African Commission adopted a resolution to kickstart this initiative. And during its 48th ordinary session, the African Commission adopted a resolution on securing the effective realization of access to information in Africa. And this resolution, amongst others, authorized the Special Rapporteur to initiate the process of developing a model law on access to information in Africa. On the basis of this resolution, the process of developing the model law was started and is almost complete. From 29th to the 31st of October 2010, I, together with the partners that are represented in this room, organized an expert meeting during which principles and guidelines that would form the basis for the model law were adopted. At the same time, at the same meeting, a working group and a drafting committee was also established to kickstart the drafting of the model law. And from the 19th to the 21st of January 2011, in collaboration with the Center for Human Rights of the University of Pretoria, with the financial support of an Open Society Initiative, we organized a working group meeting on the draft model law in Pretoria, South Africa. The workshop was aimed at bringing together members of the working group to discuss the draft law prepared by the drafting committee. The draft model law is available on the website of the African Commission, and we have put it there to allow stakeholders to make comments on it. In addition to this, in collaboration with the partners, we organized a series of consultative workshops on the draft, and we held those workshops in all the 5 regions of the continent. And we held those workshops from June 2011 to June 2012. And these workshops were held in Southern Africa, in East Africa, in West and Central Africa, and in North Africa. And these meetings drew representatives from governments, ministries of justice, foreign affairs, communications and informations, members of parliament, national human rights institutions, the media, the academia, and election management bodies, and all civil society organizations, together with intergovernmental organizations. It is worth noting that all the feedback received at these consultations, as well as those received by email, were considered by the working group, and based on this, the model law is being finalized for adoption by the African Commission at its 52nd ordinary session, which will be held in the Republic of Ivory Coast in October this year. The model law will be presented to the African Commission during this coming session, and subsequently, sensitization meetings will be held with various organizations and institutions, including the African Union Commission, the Pan-African Parliament, NEPAD and the African peer review mechanisms, and all the regional economic communities such as SADC, ECOWAS, and the East African Community, to mention a few. We'll also carry out engagement and advocacy visits to some of the countries that are in the process of adopting access to information laws, such as Botswana, Egypt, Ghana, Mozambique, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, and Zambia, to encourage them to adopt these laws, and to just encourage them to ensure that their laws comply with minimum standards as provided for in the regional and international instruments, and also provided for in the model law. We stand ready to assist Namibia, Mr. Permanent Secretary, with the drafting of its access to information law, should we be invited to do so. Please convey to the Minister of Information that there is a draft law on access to information. There is a model law on access to information in Africa, and that your department can use the model law to shape the Namibian access to information law, and there is now no need to wait any longer. Please convey this to the Minister. When we started with the model law project, only 5 countries on the continent had adopted access to information laws, namely Angola, Ethiopia, South Africa, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. And 2 had actionable access to information regulation, being Niger and Tunisia. However, since the development of the model law, more countries have adopted access to information laws. And those countries are the Republic of Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, and Nigeria also has to be applauded. And Namibia should take the cue from Nigeria. I think in Nigeria, the access to information law was on the statute books for about 10 years. And with the push of the access to information activists in that country and elsewhere, President Goodluck Jonathan signed the bill into law when he took office. So there is hope in Namibia. And now that we are gathered here today to build the momentum and to encourage and support the government of Namibia to adopt the law, I'm sure it will be adopted. And we encouraging you. We are not pushing you. We're simply encouraging the government. At least give yourselves 2 years. As I said, you have a draft model law that you can use to shape yours. So Nigeria has a law, Niger has a law, and Tunisia has a law. And the following countries have bills pending adoption, and these bills were influenced to some extent by the draft model law. And these are Botswana. I'm hoping that the Member of Parliament from Botswana is in this room, because we are watching the process in Botswana as it is unfolding, and we are encouraging you to move with speed as well. And I'm hoping that time permitting will also visit Botswana to further give impetus in that country for the adoption of the access to information law. Burundi, Egypt, Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Rwanda, Senegal, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, Tanzania, other countries that have bills pending on access to information. Mozambique is one that has been having its access to information bill pending for a long time, and we need to also push a little bit. Despite the fact that the model law process is still to be completed, it has already created a very positive impact on the African continent. In this regard, according to the Right to Information rating, and I quote, the African Union's draft model law for AU member states, which has not yet been finalized, sets a high standards with 138 points out of 150, while the average for the region's 10 access to information law is 91 out of 150. So we are doing well. Our access to information draft model law has already gained momentum, or has caught the attention, so to speak, of the access to information activists in the world, and it has already received 138 points out of 150, and the average is 91 for laws in other parts of the world. Furthermore, even though not directly related to the model law, it is worth noting that in order to give impetus to the initiatives of the African Union to get as many countries as possible to ratify the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, the model law consultative meetings included discussions on the Charter on Democracy and strategies to fast-track its ratification. In this regard, in addition to Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Ghana, Guinea, Lesotho, Rwanda, Mauritania, Sierra Leone, South Africa, and Zambia that have ratified the Charter on Democracy, the Republic of Chad, Cameroon, Mozambique, Niger, have either ratified or deposited their instruments of ratification at the African Union Commission as part of advocacy undertaken by the Special Rapporteur in the course of these regional consultations. In this regard, on the 15th of February this year, the African Charter on Democracy finally came into effect after the 15th instrument of ratification was deposited by the Republic of Cameroon. We encourage the Republic of Namibia to ratify this charter because our information is that Namibia has not yet ratified the Charter on Democracy. I would like to underscore that the idea behind the consultations on the Charter on Democracy was to popularize the right of access to information as an integral component of the domestication of the Democracy Charter and all other relevant AU instruments. Once the model law is finalized and adopted, a lot still has to be done to ensure that it achieves the purpose for which it was developed. Otherwise, it may be rendered meaningless. The purpose of the model law can only be realized if states parties to the African Charter embark on or expedite the drafting of their national access to information laws and put in place strategies for implementation. Of course, we all know that effective and successful implementation demands political commitment from the top and also depends on involvement of civil society organizations. Thus, there is a need for an effective and meaningful collaboration between governments and civil society organizations. And here we're talking about NGOs, journalists, media practitioners, academics, etc., to make implementation a reality. Civil society organizations should also play a greater role in monitoring the implementation of their national laws. More generally, in addition to adopting access to information laws, one step towards promoting the model law, as seen in the document indicating my planned activities post the adoption of the model law, is lobbying our governments to repeal all laws that unduly restrict the right of access to information, such as official secrecy laws, where they still exist. It is imperative that governments and legislators promote and secure economic and social development. As such, if secrecy is encouraged within governments and state institutions, it will hamper the realization of the right to information. In order for governments to meet their developmental objectives, a freedom of information regime is imperative. Another step is to raise public awareness at all levels, especially among public representatives, on the advantages of having an open government by adopting laws that will make information held by public bodies available to the people. Those of us who have access to resources should think of establishing a fund to assist countries that may need assistance in drafting access to information laws. Furthermore, best practice should also be adopted in countries that are still teething in this venture. South Africa's experience in access to information legislation has been considered as international good practice. It can therefore provide significant lessons for other countries on the continent at various stages of draft legislation. In addition, even where legislation exists, such as in South Africa, strong political will and leadership within the government is required for the implementation process to take place effectively. This is only possible if governments understand the importance of transparency and access to information in improving the development process. There is also a dire need to make information automatically available to the public in simple and concise language, and if possible, translated to local languages for the benefit of all. As Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa, I applaud the efforts made by the organizers of this conference, and I'm hoping that, as I have already indicated, that this conference will accelerate the adoption of access to information law in this country. In conclusion, in our quest and commitment for the creation of open governments on our beloved continent, we should be spurred on by one of the principles in the preamble of the Declaration of principles on freedom of expression, which provides as follows, and I quote, "Respect for freedom of expression, as well as the right of access to information held by public bodies and companies, will lead to greater public transparency and accountability, as well as to good governance and the strengthening of democracy. All stakeholders present here today and beyond should therefore exercise commitment to the principles of accountability and transparency for a better Africa." I thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, mighty words from our minister through our permanent secretary and our special rapporteur. If you take note, we are speaking the same language, just different sides of the same coin. And hopefully we will get to acknowledge that and assert that for a better way to get to where we need to go in terms of getting laws in this country for access to information. They did such a good job in terms of delivering their remarks. We have so much time left on our hands, and while we are still fresh, we are encouraging ourselves then to say, why not? It is so relevant and so linked in terms of what they were saying that it's a pleasure for me to say, please, we are gonna start with our first session and still be on time for tea break. Looking forward to borrow from her. Nigeria as a role model. Hence, it's a pleasure to call on Mr. Edetain Ojo from Nigeria to come and give us our first presentation, to be the moderator for this, with Mr. Henry Minor giving our first presentation on policy framework for Africa, which include Namibia. Madam.
Good morning. With your kind permission, I'd like to stand on existing protocols and thank you also for your patience in being willing for us to continue the session, although many of us were expecting a break. Some of us need an injection of caffeine from time to time to continue to function, and we're going to have to delay that briefly. I also would like to thank the Namibians for your patience in waiting thus far to have an access to information legislation. I don't think anyone can accuse you of impatience if 13 years after Cabinet resolved to have a legislation, you still haven't got one, and you haven't brought down the roof. So I think you've been extremely patient.